Here we're going to show you what causes the aggregate expenditure schedule to shift, right? So for example, I draw this up. Okay, so we've got this situation, and then we have our aggregate expenditure schedule. Aggregate expenditure schedule 1. What causes this to shift? Right? What causes the situation where this goes up and you end up with your second AE schedule? Or what causes this to fall? Right? What causes this to fall? And then you have your AE schedule 3. So we want to look at what causes these movements, right? What causes these movements in your aggregate expenditure schedule, in your actual spending. Okay. Right. So in order to explain that, we simply go to what we know, which is aggregate expenditure is equal to consumption plus investment plus government spending plus NX, net exports, right? So a change in consumption or investment or government spending or net exports will affect aggregate expenditure. Okay, so if consumption goes up, aggregate expenditure will go up. If consumption comes down, aggregate expenditure will go down, and you have your shifts. And it's the same with investment and government spending and net exports. So the simple answer is any change in C, I, G, or NX will lead to a change in AE and hence a shift in the schedule. Okay, but more specifically, what can cause the consumption to shift in this instance, right? So for example, if we could give you a slightly harder situation and we say there's been a fall in tax. Fall in tax. And then you have to figure, okay, we have the situation, the tax rate has fallen. Is that going to affect consumption or investment or government spending or net exports? Right? If you keep things simple, you will see that a fall in tax will definitely affect your consumption. Right? It will definitely affect your consumption because it will affect your disposable income. Okay? Your disposable income is equal to your gross income minus tax. Okay, if your gross income is $1,000 and the tax rate is 10%, you have to pay $100 and you're left with $900. And then depending on your marginal propensity to consume, you will consume money based on your disposable income of $900. But if the tax rate falls to 5%, right, if the tax rate is no longer 10%, if the tax rate happens to be 5%, then you're going to end up in a situation. I cannot seem to, yeah. Anyway, you're going to end up in a situation where you're going to be paying $50 in tax, not $100, and your disposable income is $950. So you have more money to spend, and your consumption will go up. Your consumption goes up, your aggregate expenditure goes up. Okay, so that's one situation where fall in tax. You can also make the argument that a fall in tax will benefit businesses because business tax goes down, right? We just said tax, we didn't say income tax, for example. So things like that, you know, as long as you can justify your answer, not just give an answer, but justify your answer, right? We need to know why you have answered the way you have. You need to explain it. Okay, we could also have another situation. Remove that. So I had fall in tax. Have another situation, I can say there has been, for example, an increase in interest rates. Okay, an increase in interest rates, you need to understand, will affect investment. Businesses borrow money. If it becomes more expensive to borrow money, businesses will invest less. There will be a fall in investment. Right? A fall in investment means a fall in aggregate expenditure, means a fall in your aggregate expenditure schedule. Right? I could give you another situation. I could say there has been a strengthening of the exchange rate. Okay, the Australian dollar has gotten stronger. Okay, this would affect your net exports. Remember, net exports is exports minus imports. If the Australian dollar is strong, that would reduce our exports because foreigners find it more expensive to buy Australian products and they will buy less Australian products. But it will increase our imports because it's cheaper for Australians to buy foreign products now. Our Australian dollar is strong. Okay? So that will reduce net exports, right? Which means that will reduce aggregate expenditure and that will shift the curve down. Okay, so these are the things you need to think about. Okay, something has happened. Again, there could be more than one answer. Right? My example with the fall in tax, you could have answered it in terms of business tax. Even with interest rates, you could argue that if interest rates go up, consumers borrow less money, consumption will fall. So it's possible to have more than one answer. But you need to justify your answer.